help out. We do this because we love you. And how can we love you when we don't really know you that well yet? It's because of Christ's love in us. Because of His amazing love in us, we're able to love you. So just want to kind of start off with that. And then some of the questions that you brought to us. Let's start with some of the general ones first, ladies. What is the one thing you would change looking back on child rearing? Who wants to answer that? Ruth, do you want to answer that one on child rearing? Leon? Okay, all right. Yeah.
For all you young ladies who, moms, grandmoms, aunts, uncles, all love these books. Both my daughter and my daughter-in-law put these books together for me. I haven't gotten one in a couple of years because as kids, believe it or not, as kids get older, your time gets less. You think you don't have time now, you won't as they grow because their activities grow. But they put together these books that are a year's worth of pictures, just snapshots, fun things that the family has done all year. And I get them and sign them, and they're memories forever. So they're treasures. So if you don't do one, or you don't know what to do for your parents or your grandparents, make them a book. And this one's more detailed because it's a whole year, but I brought a couple that my daughter-in-law in South Carolina just made for an event when the whole family was together. And so they're just fun. Good memories, good pictures, and just snapshots. No photography from not against photographers, but I mean, they're just and I'm sorry I have to leave. My husband has a medical procedure. I have to get into it.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
and one other, I'm going to say, somebody had asked a question about getting children to hear or they're not listening. We found with our adopted granddaughter that it wasn't she couldn't hear. I mean, she wasn't listening to what they were saying. She couldn't hear. They had to get her ears tested. So sometimes when you think your child's not listening and she was only 3, she couldn't hear well. So, don't give up on them. Sometimes they're defiant, but sometimes they really can't hear you.
So what about that? Anything you would change when you look back on your child rearing? Yeah.
I would saturate your children with Scripture. Growing up in my generation, you took them to church, and that was pretty much all that was expected of you. And when my son was about 16 years old, I had really begun to get into some intense Bible study, but he just drove me nuts one evening, and so I threw my Bible at him. That's not what I did. I mean, from the day they are born, read Scripture to them, pray over them daily. And there's a really big spider under the yellow table. That's a really big spider.
Anything else on that, Lee?
No.
One thing, because I became a mom at an older age, one thing I had to realize about myself is I had to throw away my to-do list. I used to be a person who would write at the beginning of the day, blah, 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 I have 10 things to do, and I'm happy if I get to check them off and things. And that does not work with a baby or a toddler. So what I decided to do then, because I like to give myself a little credit at the end of the day, I would write down a few things that I actually accomplished at the end of the day and put a little star by it, instead of all the million things that I did not do. Don't live in that condemnation. So.
No, anything I regret?
No, anything to change? Your recommendations for moms of small children, anything to change on your child rearing?
Yeah, I will tell you a story. We all have those moments that we're really not proud of. But I will tell you this. When John was small, when he wanted to negotiate with me, I always went the other way. And so he learned not to try to to push me, just by doing that. But one afternoon, I picked him up from school, and we had to go to take my mother to the grocery store, and she lived off of Prophet Road, and we were in Greene County. From the time he got in the car, and I don't remember what it was about to this day, he was on me about, I think he wanted to go visit a friend for the weekend. And it wasn't somebody I really wanted to spend the whole weekend with. I think that was it, but I'm not totally sure. But I do remember very clearly, he just would not let go. And we got to Mom's house, and it turned out she didn't call me, but we didn't have to take her to the grocery store because her boyfriend had taken her the night before. She always liked to see us, though, so I'm sure that was it. But we got back in the car, probably in 20 minutes, and he started again. And I don't even know if Sheetz was there then, but it's on 29 North as you're going into Ruckersville. There's a Sheetz there. I was at that light, and I snapped. And I said, if you don't shut up, I am going to beat the living mess out of you. And he was like, because I didn't use those words, he backed up in the corner of the car, and he said, Mom, that would be child abuse. And I said, yes, it would. And you would know what child abuse is. Now, I'm not going to do that, but I don't have to clean your room. I don't have to cook your meals. I don't have to wash your clothes. And he was totally silent. But when I got home, I just gotten a puppy, and she was being crate trained, so I took her out to go to the bathroom, and I heard him in the utility room. He was actually had a chair, he was going to wash his clothes. And then he wanted to fix dinner that night. And so I helped him, I think he was about 7 or 8. But I helped him fix his favorite meal, which was hot dogs and macaroni and cheese and applesauce. But while I look back on that, and I thought, man, I wish I could have said that. It actually was a good learning experience for him, and he apologized to me that night. But I still am not proud of what I said. But, controlling your anger is a big thing.
It's true. It's true. Another thing Jim and I learned recently is just staying in touch with each other on what is okay for our kids to do or not do. Because sometimes if you're the one who's home all the time, it seems like you're making all the rules or, all the things, and he just kind of gets it by the wayside or osmosis or something. How is he supposed to know that I decided they couldn't play with so-and-so after school? Or, and you have to think ahead about things like I have a 3rd grader now, and he's talking about sleepovers. So we have to think ahead as a couple, what age are we going to allow sleepovers? Will we? Those kinds of things. So we try to check in, and I sometimes will call him and say, this and such happened today. By the way, when you get home, so-and-so has a consequence because of that. So stay in touch with your spouse and don't, forget that they might not know everything that has happened in the past 8 hours.
And we got in the habit of saying, what did your mom say? Or what did your dad say? And make them say what they said, too. Ask
So they couldn't get a different answer from a different parent?
Right, no. If you don't agree, you support your husband in front of your children and then take it up later.
Good point. Excellent. All right. Another question we had was, what is the one thing you would recommend for small moms and small children? Well, we went over some of that, but another thing I would say is take time to be with other moms that you feel comfortable with. Don't wait until your house is clean. It'll never happen. So invite them over anyway, and they'll be relieved actually that they see that your house is not perfect, because theirs isn't perfect where they left either. So I would really recommend that you be with other moms, which is probably why you're here today. We had some questions about boundaries with in-laws, okay? So you all are going to have to answer those. I don't have in-laws. So one of the questions is how to maintain good boundaries with a husband's family. Another question on boundaries is how to approach when there's a difference in treatment from grandparents to grandchildren.
Be careful how you talk about my parents. She's my sister-in-law.
And I'm going to answer this question.
Because you're the great in-laws.
No, I don't even say, 'cause I really didn't experience that, so.
I'll hear you.
I'm just messing.
I was a year and a half, so.
I really did have incredible in-laws. There was no time that I remember issues. I'm sorry. I truly looked up to my mother-in-law. She was a really amazing woman. And father-in-law as well. My dad passed away when it's been 20-some years ago, and I had another father. And so I really have no advice other than respect them. Above all else, they are your husband's parents, good or bad. They are your husband's parents, and you will be a better wife to him by loving them. You will also be a witness to them if they don't know Jesus. You will show the love of Christ. And believe me, this can only be undergirded by prayer and being in the Word. Because from what I've heard, there can be some pretty tough people out there that you marry into. And you don't just marry that man, you marry into that family. I was blessed to have an incredible sister-in-law. You were waiting for that, right? Just great family all the way around. Not without issues, don't misunderstand me, but a willingness to love and be loved and work together. But for those who have to set boundaries, do so in love and respect for them. That would be my advice.
One thing I can say though, if you're dealing with in-laws, I think that it's real important for the child of that parent be the one to deal with his or her parents, because I think you can really open up a can of worms when you're dealing with the mother-in-law or the father-in-law. Let the son or the daughter be the one to talk it over with them and say, honey, you got to go and work this out. I think that would be healthy.
I actually have something to say about that. I'm sorry. My mother-in-law was probably the most difficult person I've ever met. I mean, she had good intentions, but she had a temper that would just snap like that. And my mother had the same tendency, so I had grown up with that, and I learned that you don't confront it because that just makes it worse. But what you do is wait until they finished and say something like, and my husband would not deal with it because he had dealt with her his whole life. And so and I was warned by my sister-in-law, you know, you're in the what do they call it, the stage where, the honeymoon stage. She said one day she's going to really lay down the boom on you, and she did several times. But what I did is I let her finish, and then I said, you know, Doris, I love you. You are my mother-in-law, but you're going to have to use kinder tones. And she was like, but you have to forgive me. I said, I do forgive you. I do forgive you. I don't hold any malice. But the next time this happens, I'm just going to pick up and leave because I don't want you to be embarrassed by something you say. And I don't want me to be angry because of something you say. And it did help. It did not always. You know, she would still snap because she had some medical issues and she said they were to blame, and that may be true. But the bottom line is sometimes you have to stand firm in love, I guess is what I'm saying. And if you have a spouse that doesn't want to deal with their parents, then you don't have a choice. So.
Well, we live in the same town because I grew up here. Married my high school sweetheart, whose parents lived here. So his family's different than mine. And so the best thing was communication with him and letting him know how I felt but the biggest thing is I'm only responsible for me and how I respond. I can't control how they responded or anything they said. I can only control my response. And so I have a choice to make. Do you respond in love and gentleness and kindness, or do you get upset and angry and lash out? So you have to choose. And sometimes it's a moment by moment choice. but you choose how you're going to respond. So they ultimately see the love of Christ in you. And we're the best of friends now. And so Russ's dad passed away, I guess 14 years ago, but his mom's still here. And so attends our church here, and she's wonderful. So, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of communication.
Gentle answer turns away wrath, right? There's a book we have several books on the table behind us here, and we'll be glad for you to come and look through them and things. There's one that I've used a lot. It's called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud, and it may be on your list there. So I would recommend that if you're having trouble setting boundaries. So let me take another quick poll of the audience here. How many of you have been out on a date with your husband in the past month? Anybody? Ooh, there are a couple. Good. Good. How many of us remember what a date is or what a date looks like? That's kind of hard sometimes when you have young children. So I want to encourage you to date your husband. Whatever that might look like for you, they need it and we need it. I'll let you in on a little personal secret we have going. Don't tell Jim, okay? Jim and another guy here at church have kind of a date night challenge going. Because for them, it has to be a competition somehow or something. Anyway, they encourage each other to set up date nights with us, the wives. And sometimes we'll share a babysitter, and we'll each go our two different ways. We'll just have the babysitter at one of our houses, and it takes care of all the kids. Or sometimes we go as the four of us together. And oftentimes we'll choose something to do that's free because the babysitter costs so much. But there's lots of things you can do if you can be creative. You can go for a picnic in the park with just your husband. There's free museums and things that you can go to, even on a Sunday afternoon. So anyway, we're going to get into the marriage questions in case you're wondering what the setup was for that. But here's some of the marriage questions. How do you handle a fight with your spouse, especially with your children present?
Well,
Year and a half old, I divorced my ex-husband, so I can't help you there.
You can pray for us.
I think it depends on what the conflict is. So it's really good for kids to see the resolving of conflict. So I think it's okay to disagree in front of them and resolve it in front of them, because they're going to see demonstrated grace and kindness, how you respond. So that's really good. Now, if it's something really serious and one of you's really heated, save it for later. Table it, and that's okay.
Oh, I do have something to say. My brother passed away in 2010. He was 8 years older than me. And something that I learned from his marriage to my sister-in-law, Paige, she shared this with me from the time that they were first actually dating. And I love this, because I heard him say it when I heard her say this one day, and I asked her about it. When they would be having a disagreement, and one of them would start to just pluck the other one's nerve to the point where, it might get a little uncomfortable, they would say, "That's enough, Russ," or "That's enough, Paige." They would stop. And I heard Paige say, "That's enough, Russ." And later I asked about it, and then they would take it offline. I thought that was a great idea, they had that up front from the beginning of their marriage. Yeah, that's enough.
One thing that I probably wish I had done better, but I did do sometimes, okay, is never criticize your husband in front of your children. As much as possible, even during what could be a heated argument, let your children see you respect him, you love him, and that he is the light of your life. Even when you like to put that light out.